chart that I'll pass out a little bit later, but I'm going to use this as most of the presentation. So the presentation today is really going to be about why you would pick a different glue, one over the other. But maybe before we start with that piece, let's talk a little bit about glue and wood together. So all of us end up using adhesives to glue wood together. So some of the things you want to make sure you do from the start is first you have to decide what you're going to do. If we're going to make a tabletop like this, we're going to edge glue pieces along that. So if we edge glue it, we're going to use clamps. So how many clamps do you use? My wife has a real hard time with this because I never have enough clamps. So I'm always buying clamps. My clamp rack, I've outgrown it. I need to do something else to do it. But when you edge glue on, there's a few things that are really important. My shoulder is going to bother me a little bit. So if you have all these boards that you're going to edge glue together and you're going to put a clamp across here, so the clamping force will come out at a 45-degree angle. So if I put the next clamp over here, and this will go all the way here, and it's going to come back at the same 45-degree angle if my clamp is out here. So I'm going to end up with good clamp pressure here, but I have no clamp pressure here. So how do we solve this problem? Because now we don't have our clamps close enough. And let's say that this is 8 inches here between them. You really can't get your clamps any closer than 8 inches as you turn the handle on the clamps. So, ideas out there? Calls are the answer. So if this piece is 3 inches, I've only got 6 inches here, and I've only got 6 inches here, I got a little gap. So if I put a call out here, and now my forces come out at the same 45-degree angle, I'm going to have a little overlap. So that's the only purpose of the call, is to take and spread those forces out so I can get clamping pressure that's even for all the boards across there. If you're going to spread this out and put glue on here, so in this I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 different glue joints. So how many people put glue on one side of the board? How many put it on 2 sides of the board?
Depends on which day of the week it is.
Pardon me?
Depends on which day of the week it is.
Depends on the day of the week. So there's really not a right or a wrong answer. So it'll depend a lot on the glue that you're going to use, but most of the time we're using these glues. We're using the PVA glues, okay? One side is enough, but you have to make sure you do it in the right amount of open time. So if your open time is getting a little bit long, if you put glue on both sides, it'll help, but you'll end up with a thicker glue joint. So the thicker glue joint makes the joint a little bit more exposed. If you're gluing joinery as opposed to a tabletop, you want to make sure that the joinery, you're going to clamp it so that it's perpendicular to the joint or parallel, okay? So again, you may need to use cauls. Dry clamping is a must, okay? So if you're going to dry clamp it, you're going to find out, oh, I'm going to have a caul in there. Okay, you're going to see that all of your joints are nice and tight. Okay, so your wood, you want to glue anything with a moisture content of 17% or less. It's really not a big problem. If you have wood stored outside and it's got a cover on it, in Minnesota, it'll get down to about 15%. So that wood can be glued. Raleigh is a real firm believer in equilibrium moisture content, EMC. That just means you bring the wood into your shop and let it sit, and let it equalize and become stable in the environment. So if you glue wood that is high moisture content next to wood that is low moisture content, you're going to have a problem. Because the high moisture is going to migrate into the low moisture, and you're going to get some shrinkage. Is that wood, the glue is going to cure, and once it cures, then it's going to develop a lot of stresses. So those are some just real basic things that you want to do. You want to joint all the surfaces. The best way to do it, and it's not how I do it, I take the wood right out of the joiner and I put it together, but the best way would be to join it and then put a hand plane over it and get one swipe and get it completely flat so you don't have the little scallops there from the joiner. So you'll just end up with a little thicker glue joint, maybe a little bit more visible. So I think I want to now switch over and talk about the different types of glues. So anybody?
Steve, can I back you up for 1 minute?
Yeah.
Talking about moisture content of two different woods, can you address gluing up a softwood and a hardwood together? Or don't they have?
If you can, so if you look at the density of the wood, the lower the density of the wood, the easier it is for the glue to adhere to it. So if you get really hard wood, so white oak's going to be harder than walnut or ash, or basswood will be easy. So if you do a pine to a hard maple, you'll end up with more problems than if you do a pine to maybe a popple, or a softer wood. So if you can get the densities close to the same, you'll have less problems, but you want the moisture content of both to be equal.
So really the problem would be down the road if you make something with a popple and an oak that...
A poplar and an oak?
Yeah, or bass.
You won't have it, you shouldn't have any problem if the moisture contents were the same.
No, but I'm saying the expansion and contraction of those two woods,
So
aside from the glue, would be different. Is that true?
yes.
I guess, okay.
Okay, but the glue generally today, the glue that we use is stronger than the wood.
Okay.
Okay, so if the glue is stronger, you may have some stress there, and the stress will change as it goes through the seasons, as you are shrinking in the winter and expanding in the summer, but probably you're not going to have a problem at all.
Okay.
Yeah, now I'm gluing walnut to popple. Just
Okay, so the stress will be there, but the glue will hold the stress.
The glue will be just fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and actually I think the best way to do it tonight is just like Tim did. If you have a question, raise it. I'm really very hard of hearing, so if I ask you a couple times what you say, I just want to understand your question before I give you my thoughts on that. So they have objects in the pyramids that are, I don't know, 3,000 years ago. They were glued together. They were glued together with a protein glue, they'll call it. So protein glues were hide glues, they're fish glues. A lot of different materials would make up a protein glue. So this is all protein glue over here. So this is the glue that we had that was the standard. So 100 years ago, so 1924, yes, that would be a true story. We were just in the process of getting our first glues that were not protein glues, okay? But all the glues back then were hide. So probably for about 300 years, they had one glue, so it was easy. It was a really easy question of which glue you would use. You would use a high glue. So I was fortunate enough to go to a high school that had cabinet making. So my first year in high school, I made a 10-drawer chest of drawers, okay, out of solid walnut. So the top was 6 pieces, so it's about 20 inches wide, about 5 feet long. It was made up of 6 different pieces. I used hot high glue, okay? So hot high glue, so we're gonna talk about some different terms. So the first term is called open time. So open time is how long you have from the time you put the glue on until you need to put the boards together and clamp it, okay? Open time on high glue is about 2 minutes on hot high glue. So this is hot high glue. So it comes in a granular or pearl form. So you put this, you mix this with water, about 1 to 1. Let it soak overnight, put it in a double boiler. So this is an electric glue pot, but any double boiler will work. So what's nice about this is it maintains the correct temperature. So you put the high glue in here with water and let it sit overnight. In the morning you turn it on, it goes to 140 degrees and it's going to turn to a very sticky substance. And he would get the string to be about a foot long before it started to form drops. And he said that was, I mean, one of the problems with using high glue is it's pretty much lost. So there's not very many people using hot high glue anymore. And the reason I think is because of the real short open time. It's stronger than the wood, just like the other glues, not as convenient. So one of the advantages is it comes with a darker color. So if you're doing a wood like cherry or walnut, you end up with pretty much invisible glue line. So they used to do what they call glue joints. Okay, and the glue joint just comes over and has a little cut in it. So the advantage of that is that it's very quick assembly. So when I glued up my tabletop, my dresser top that was 60 inches long and 6 pieces, okay, I ended up glue on both sides. Actually, I'm trying to think back 50 years and trying to think about what really happened back, you know, in 1969. And I'm pretty sure I glued both sides. So I set it down, clamped them together with hand screws, painted the first side, turned them over. They're random widths, okay? And then painted the other side and put them together and got clamps on them, just as fast as you can go. But, you know, that was probably about 54, 55 years ago, and the joints are just as tight as they can be. One of the advantages of high glue is you can take it apart. Okay, so you give it heat and it'll come apart. So I'm building a dining room table right now, and I got a finger joint, and the fingers are, so the finger joint is at a right angle. The finger joint is 3 inches tall, 1/8-inch fingers, so they're really skinny fingers, a lot of them, on 4 sides. I ended up using I used high glue, old brown glue, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. Some of its properties, they're a little different. So one of the advantages of the high glue is it's easily reversible. So when I clamped it up, I had one joint that wasn't tight. So 3 of the 4 joints were tight, the 4th joint was not. So the next day I took out a electric heat gun and heated up my joint. I could see that the glue was getting soft, and clamped it together and tightened that right up. It cooled down and it completely solved that problem. So a real advantage of this is its ability to take it apart and put it back together. Luthiers, people making guitars, people making violins, they only use hide glue. Okay? And they use the hide glue so they can take it apart. So hide glue, when it's sold, is sold by the gram strength. And it's a real funny terminology. So this is 200 gram strength. It'll go from about 75 to almost 500. And it's, so Donna and I went through a presentation and the guy told us what it really means. Okay? And so the guy that developed the gram strength had a 1/2-inch diameter plunger that would go on top of the glue, and it had to be depressed. They put weight on top of it in grams, and it had to be depressed 4 millimeters. Okay? And the weight is how much it took to depress it. So the thicker the glue, the higher the gram strength. Okay? The thicker the glue. So luthiers will use the 500 gram weight, and it's a very brittle glue. This will not work for woodworkers. So if woodworkers, if you want to do general woodworking and you want to use hot hide, and actually I want to work more with hot hide personally. I'd like to go back and try it because I like that I can't see my glue lines at all. But you want around 200 grams, 197 grams, something like that for the gram strength. So this is hot hide. Here's another hot hide. There's some, so it looks the same. They don't really tell you the gram strength on this, so I don't know what it is.
Steve, what would happen to the glue if you didn't have it hot? Would it just congeal, or if you don't keep it hot, what happens to the glue? Does it congeal, or?
Okay, so this is old brown glue. So I know Don's used old brown glue. So here's old brown glue. And if I push really, really hard, I'll get a little bit to come up. So you can't use it.
Yeah,
Okay, so it'll turn into this
sludge.
paste.
Yeah.
Actually, at room temperature, the hide glue will probably turn back to a solid.
Yeah, okay.
It won't even be like that. So, so the open time on the hot hide is 2 minutes. They don't really say what the total assembly time is. So another option would be tight bond, okay? And they put something in here to keep this into a liquid. So this glue you can use right out of the bottle. It's a hide glue. This probably has some urea in it to help it. So this has got a 10-minute open time and 20 to 30-minute clamp time. So much better. The moisture resistance of any of the hide is on the low end. Okay, so if it's going to be, for instance, in the kitchen, probably not a very good choice.
What's the set time on the hot hide? What's the set time? How soon?
You have 1 to 2 minutes open time, and you're going to start clamping it. After that, it's going to get, it's
5
almost
minutes,
nothing.
yeah.
So you can, you know, probably within 5 minutes, you're done with the piece that you're working on. So, old brown glue, okay. This guy out in California that makes this, you can buy this at Woodcraft or Rockler. So it's got an open time. So this is kind of a combination of the two. So you're going to take this and you're going to put this into a double boiler with water, or take some of it out of your bottle, and then put it in a double boiler. You're going to heat it up to 140. So 140 is the magic number. 160, you're going to start to destroy the proteins in the protein glue, and you're going to weaken it. Okay, so at 140, it's going to liquefy, and become very spreadable. The advantage of the old brown glue is that your open time is 10 minutes, but your clamping time is about 50. So you can put something together and you can clamp it and you can move things around. If you've got a little bit of clearance between your parts, you can move it around until things settle in. So it's a nice substitute. Again, not great moisture resistance. Yeah.
Just a note that.
Yep. And actually, let me talk about shelf life on all of those. So shelf life on the type bond is 2 years. Shelf life on the old brown glue is 2 years. They'll put it on here. This one's best if used by July of 2024. So this one, if I wanted to use it, I probably wouldn't use this one anymore.
I've been storing that in the refrigerator.
Yeah, if you do that, you're
I've had
gonna,
some that's up to 5 years old. And that's what-
yeah. So shelf life on the crystals, indefinite. Many lifetimes. So that's the protein glues. I brought in rabbit skin. Raleigh always likes to talk about rabbit skin. So this is used in finishing, but also learned that they would use rabbit skin if they were going to try and get something to stick. Maybe at the time they had ivory, or you got some abalone or some other shells. The old timers would use rabbit glue because it's very flexible to put on the different materials. Okay, the next group that we get are PVAs. So PVAs are polyvinyl acetate. So we're going right to about Second World War is at the end of Second World War is when they developed PVAs, and the PVAs started off with the white glue. Okay, so the white glue has an open time of 5 minutes. So it's moisture resistant, is a little better than the high glue, but it's not very good. Okay, it's not very high. Total assembly time is 10 to 15 minutes. It has 2 year shelf life. The guy from Typebond said that it's 2 years is what their official language is. As long as it looks like glue and still is liquid, it's good. It really isn't bad. Okay, if you store it in a 40-degree refrigerator, 10 years, probably minimum, is how long it'll last, is the shelf life. So the big advantage of the white glue is it dries clear. So again, you're going to get a glue joint that isn't going to be very visible. Strength-wise, it's I think around 3,500. Let me take a look here. Yeah, strength is 3,550, so it's stronger than the wood. So there's really no strength issues. So the weakness is the low resistance to moisture on the white glues. Then Typebond Original came out probably the mid-70s, okay? It was the first yellow glue that came out. It's an aliphatic resin. So they combined the PVA's polyvinyl acetate with polyvinyl alcohol. The alcohol actually, polyvinyl alcohol is the bonding agent to the cellulose fiber. That's what it's really bonding to, is the cellulose. And these glues are all good on the edge grain. They're not very good on the in grain. And the same is true with the hide glues. They really aren't very good on the in grain either. So the Type Bond Original, your open time 46 minutes, so it's pretty close to the white glue. Your total assembly time is 15 minutes. Clamping time is really kind of a funny thing. So I generally say 2 to 3 hours for something that has little or no stress in it. Okay, and take the clamps off. If it's a stressed item, if it's something that you bent or you put a lot of stress into, leave the clamps on overnight. So Type Bond is better. The original is better than the white glue for moisture, and that's really the difference between these three, if you will: the Type Bond Original, the Type Bond 2, and the Type Bond 3. Are really the open time and the clamping time are identical for the Type Bond 2 and the Type Bond 3. You're going to get a little bit better moisture resistance with the Type Bond 2 than the Type Bond. Raleigh uses these two glues. He uses a protein glue and he uses the original. And the reason that he does that is for his glue cleanup. So when you glue something together and you get a little squish out, if you don't get that cleaned up right away, it's a problem. So you got to make sure that it's gone before you put your finish on there. So with the high glue, you can take hot water and a paintbrush, if you will, and you can dissolve it and get it off the surface and it's gone. If you have Type Bond Original, you can use vinegar and do the same thing. Okay, so those are Raleigh's two go-to glues. Okay, Type Bond 2, you won't get to be able to do the vinegar trick with that. You're going to get it off with a chisel or sandpaper or something else if you've got it that's spread out. So Type Bond 2, it's the same open time, same close time, and the strength is pretty much the same as well. These are all 24-month shelf life is what they'll tell you is official. And if the glue is fine, you can still use it. If it's separated, maybe you want to throw it away. So that's those. This one over here is Type Bond 2 Extend. So Type Bond also has an Extend product. So they offer it in two different glues. They offer it in the original, and they offer it in the Type Bond 2. With the Extend, your open time is 15 minutes. So if you have a more complicated glue up that you really can't get done in 5 minutes open time, then you want to go to the Extend, and the Extend will give you 15 minutes, and then you can put clamps on it, and you can do it from there. I bought this. I want to do a torsion box. So a torsion box is I'm going to make a panel that is pretty lightweight. There's ribs inside of it, so I can't get it done in the 5-minute glue up time. So if I'm going to stay with the PVAs, I'm going to use an Extend. Okay. Type Bond 3, they will tell you is waterproof. So it's not waterproof. Okay. It is very water resistant. So Type Bond 3 has got 8 to 10 minute open time. So its open time is much better than the other PVAs. It's not as high as Extend, but its selling point is really its water resistance. So cutting boards, what do you use for your cutting boards, Mike, for glue?
2 and 3.
2?
2 and 3.
2 and 3. So 3 is actually a pretty good choice for cutting boards.
The problem with 3 is it's a dark color.
Yes, that's right. So the problem is that your glue joint is much more visible with the Type Bond 3 because it's dark. Okay? But I've heard of people, I don't personally think wooden cutting board ever goes into a dishwasher, but I'm not a housewife.
I'll tell you what, if you put a cutting board glued with Ultimate Type Bond 3 in a dishwasher, get dustbin, 'cause when you put one of Mike's in there, it'll be pieces.
No,
Yes, it'll be pieces.
no, that's not what I've heard from people that have tested cutting boards with Type Bond 3.
It'll be pieces.
So, I'm not ever gonna put a cutting board that I built into a dishwasher to find out.
I'm not gonna volunteer to use mine.
I'm not gonna volunteer my dishwasher.
No,
It'll come apart.
I'm told that, I know of one guy that has made cutting boards, and he put his through the dishwasher to see if it'd do it. I don't know how many times he put it in there. I don't know.
You could say, I'm sorry.
Another thing that you haven't touched on is minimum temperature, and that's
Oh, I should.
why Type Bond 3 was my go-to glue, because my
Yeah, because
old
it'll go
shop
down, I
was-
think, to 40 degrees.
Yeah, my old shop was very poorly insulated, and I heated it with a direct vent heater that burned #1 fuel oil, which can be up to $5 a gallon, so.
Yeah.
And
It's,
I could turn the heat down and it would still cure.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so any glue that I've really talked about so far, the guy that really talks about protein glues was talking about, what did they do 200 years ago when they're gluing up something and their shops were really cold. He said they'd take a very hot rag and dip it in water, in the hot water, and then spread it on there. I looked at old industrial art book, and it said to heat your wood up prior to applying the hot glue so you can get extended open time. So he did it with the hot water. All the PVAs are, Type Bond 3 is 45 degrees. I'm gonna pass out this wood comparison sheet to you tonight, and it has that on there. It's called the chalk point. So below the 45 degrees for Type Bond 3, the glue will form little clusters, and they'll never cure. It'll come apart. But 45 degrees is pretty cold. So yeah, your shop, if it's cool, you want to do that. And I'll talk about that with some of the other ones. Over here is the opposite. You gotta have really warm areas.
Steve, don't they also talk about using Type Bond 3 for exterior things?
So Type Bond 3 is much better than Type Bond 2 exterior, but Type Bond 3, I would still want it underneath an eave. So if it's exposed to moisture, you're reading, I don't know if this one says, no. Yeah, it says right over here that it's waterproof. Well, the ASTM method that they use for that is one, so it gets shocked quite a bit. They'll boil it, and then they'll put it in cold and boil it and put it in cold, but it still isn't waterproof, okay? None of these are rated for construction, so none of the PVAs are. So the difference between the original and the Type Bond 2, they'll tell you you can use this in some exterior applications. They'll tell you only interior for this, okay? I would really only use this for interior. If it's something outside, I'd go to this, or if I need waterproof, I'm gonna go to epoxies. I don't have a urethane here. I am not talking about urethane. And I think, Dawn, you've done some work with some urethanes as well. No? So I did, there was a guy that I knew that put some veneer on, okay, and he used urethane glue to put the veneer on. The urethane is waterproof. It's a thermosetting, so it goes through a chemical reaction. Once it cures, it's never going to get soft again. His veneer had a lot of cross grain in it, so he had a lot of glue coming up through the pores, which in the end really wasn't an issue. At first it looks pretty ugly when you see what it looked like. The problem with urethanes is if it's anywhere close to you, you've got it all over you. So the urethane will get on your skin and stay on your skin for about 3 to 4 weeks until you wear it off. You're not going to wash it off, or you're going to just wear it off. So consequently, I really have very little experience with urethanes.
Well, it's really sensitive to humidity as well.
What's that?
Urethanes are really sensitive to humidity.
Yeah, that's.
When I lived in the southeast, I used some, and it just foamed right up.
Yeah. And the foam, when it foams like that, it's not a very strong bond.
Yeah.
So they may have a place, maybe that'll be the one glue in 100 years, they'll figure out how to make it perfect for everything, I don't know. Next group that I have is, move some of these over, are the plastic resin group. So the plastic resin is, so there's Unibond 800, and this is the shops here. And so the issue with Unibond 800 is, so it's a plastic resin glue, and its primary ingredient is urea. So urea was used quite a bit in cabinets over the past, so the government has regulated it quite a bit. So it's a two-part glue. So Unibond 800, you get your glue and then you get your hardener, and you weigh it out in the correct proportions, and then you put it on. It's used a lot in veneering, to apply veneer to a substrate. So it's a very hard glue line when it's done. It's very, very water resistant. So it's not waterproof, but it's very water resistant. So when I did my kitchen cabinets, this was my choice of glue for veneer work on my cabinets. Okay, so they've gone through a change where they were mandated to reduce their urea content. And when they did that, there was all kinds of problems that people had getting things to stick together. So they glue it together, put it in a vacuum bag overnight. The next morning they came out, let the vacuum out of the bag, and the pieces separated. So a little bit of a disappointment. So with that, it's you want to. So I have an electric blanket, okay, and my wife doesn't get to use it; it stays out in the shop. So its purpose is for the plastic resin families that I use. So any plastic resin, you need a minimum temperature in the shop, 72, they'd like you to be 75 or 80. So that's not very comfortable for me to work in my shop at that temperature. So I'll glue things up, and then I'll cover them with electric blanket, and the next morning I'll come out and it's completely cured, it's hard, everything's in place. So the advantage of these glues is you have a very long open time. So your open time, let's see what I put down, is going to be is 20 to 30 minutes. So actually I say 15 to 20 minutes on the Unibond and on the plastic resin. Okay, so the difference between this is you're dealing with a liquid resin and a powder. Here you're going to use the powdered resin and water. So you have to have a very good glue mixer not to get the little clumps that you want to get when you use this. But other than that, they're pretty much identical to use. I've gone away from this and gone to this, so I really don't. I've got hardener, I don't have any resin. at home. So you could use this if you have a complicated glue up where you're going to need more time. You could do that. The weakness here is you got to heat it. But once you get it in place, you need to put it into, you need to do something. So I know somebody that takes the electric oil-filled radiators. They used to be pretty popular, I think 10 years ago, okay? And he puts it under his product and puts a moving blanket over it, and he's doing the same thing. He's just trying to heat that surface up to help it. Without that
How's
joke.
the water resistance or waterproof with that glue, the powder glue?
Very good, okay? They won't say that it is waterproof. It's a structural glue, so now you've moved into structural things. So you could do this, let's say you wanted to make rafters, something crazy. You could glue it with this and it's a structural glue. I don't know that it's really gonna help you with the local building official, okay? But it would be structural, whereas the Type Bond 3 and those aren't structural. So one of the issues, okay, with this is it's very sensitive to oxygen. So I used, so when I opened, this came in a plastic tub, and as soon as I broke the seal, any of the extra glue I put into a mason jar. I put, the nitrogen, what's a little spray thing of,
Blockogen?
what's that?
Blockogen?
Yes. So I sprayed that in here. So they talk about a 1-year shelf life on this, but I think if you do that, you're gonna probably be okay. I've known somebody that's taken this and mixed it up, and it was air that got to it. So when the joint failed, which it did, the next morning it failed, he ended up calling and talking to the people. And that's something that I'd recommend that you can do. All the people that sell these glues are really, really good at talking about what they have, and they'll help you with the technical problems that you're having. The Type Bond glue guy knows that the glue is not the problem, so he'll help you figure out what was the problem that caused it to fail. Okay, that's plastic resins, and they're urea. They're urea formaldehyde. The next group that I have are epoxies. So these are more specialized. And where might you use an epoxy? So it was very interesting. Last week, went to a conference down in Des Moines, and I listened to the presentation by Franklin, who does all of the most predominant maker of the glue. And so one thing that he was saying is that if you do a mortise and a tendon, and if you have your joint real tight, and you push it together, you basically wipe most of your glue off. You don't get a lot of glue on that joint. So these are all water-based, so the water's gonna help. The wood's gonna expand when it gets the moisture in it. So if you've got a tight joint to start with, and you put a little water glue on there, you're gonna possibly squeeze it out. He said if you've got a mortise and tenon joint in like a chair, where if you rock it a little bit and you got, let's say you've got Type Bond glue in there, if that joint breaks just a little bit, just a few fibers, you know, and the next time it racks a little bit more, it breaks a little bit more, and breaks a little bit more. So the Type Bond guy said for the chair makers, the mortise and tenon, the epoxy is a better choice. And it was interesting for me to hear him say that his product wasn't necessarily the best choice for that application. Epoxy is, so the System 3, this one over here, is very good epoxy for oily woods. So oily wood, teak is an oily wood. So I'm building a cabinet for my daughter. So on the drawer guides, I put teak on there. And I pick teak because teak for the wood for the guide is full of oil. It'll have oil for the rest of its life. So that oil will keep working its way out. So it's a big, huge problem to glue any of the tropical woods. And there's a lot of different tropical woods that have oil or some scents in there that'll cause it difficult. So they're recommendations. So if you're going to use a PVA glue to do it, you take acetone on a cotton cloth and you wipe it. And if it turns a little tan, then you take another piece of white cotton and put acetone on it, and you wipe it, and you keep wiping until the cotton is clean. There is no discoloration on the cotton, and then you glue it together right then. There's no waiting. You don't let it sit overnight. If you let it sit overnight, just do your acetone all over again. And you're trying to get the oil out of the fibers that are very close to the surface, so the PVAs will stick to the cellulose. So another option is to use G2. So System 3 sells many different epoxies. Not many. I think they have 3. Okay, but the G2 is for the oily woods. So if you're doing ebony or you're doing teak or you're doing something else, so you want to use epoxies. So they'll come in a 2-part, and most of the epoxies are so it's 2 parts of the resin and 1 part of the catalyst. Okay, shelf life on epoxies is indefinite. So there isn't a shelf life on epoxies. So that's an advantage. I brought in my chair that I made a few years ago. That's put together with epoxy. Okay. You want your joints. So I didn't talk about gap filling properties. So any of the glues down here have very low gap filling properties. They really don't take up a lot of space. Epoxies don't have a problem. You got a gap, they'll fill that gap with epoxy. Unfortunately, if your gap is in a glue line, you're going to see that gap. So you really don't want any gaps there, but they will fill it. So how you use epoxies is different than how you use those glues. So epoxies, you basically want to spread it on both surfaces, and then you want to go have a cup of tea. So in about 20 minutes or 30 minutes. So what happens is that resin is now going to start to soak into the wood. Okay, in 20 or 30 minutes, you come back and you put another application of it, and then you put your pieces together. You put them together, and you probably have got about 2 or 3 hours to get your clamps in the right position. Okay, so in some very complicated glue-ups, this is a good system to go to. So you're going to get that time that you need to get everything squared up and in the right position and clamped right. Won't hurt to put an electric blanket on top of it, but you probably don't need it either. Let me see if I got anything on what they're... The caulk point on the G2 is 35 degrees. So you can go down to 35 degrees and you really don't need any heat. The chemical reaction from mixing the two will do it. The MAS, okay, this resin over here, and they have different jobs, is 40 degrees. They say 90 minutes after you put this on until it starts to cure enough that you really can't, shouldn't be moving it around anymore. This one, these people sell different hardeners, okay? So you can buy different hardeners. So this is the fast hardener, the MAS. So this one will cure in about 4 or 5 hours. So this one is going to have a different closed clamp time. So it's going to be a lot sooner. This I use, it's a very low viscosity. So if you're going to work with MDF and you want to put hinges in MDF, so the strength of a screw in MDF is just about 0. So you can take and drill the screw hole in here, put the screw in, take it out, okay? Mix up some of this in the right proportions, put it in with the syringe in that screw hole. It'll go into that MDF and soak into that wood. And 4 hours later it gets hard, and you can put a screw in there and now it'll be like it's regular hardwood. So that's the purpose of this glue, is I'm going to use it in some synthetic type wood, if you will, and try and get it so it can do some screw holding capabilities for me. The disadvantage of epoxy, okay, is when you get squish out, it goes everywhere, okay? So actually, there's a nice little trick. So this is wax lift. So wax lift is wax. Okay. So what I'll do for this, on this, when I'm going to do this, so I'm going to do a dry clamp. Okay. And I'm going to take a little piece of cotton, and I'm going to take that much wax lift. I'm going to put it on the little cotton cloth, and I'm going to go around, everything's clamped together, I'm going to go around all of that wood, and I'm going to put this wax lift on there. So I'm putting wax on the raw wood. Okay, and then I'll take it apart, I'll glue it together. When it's glued together and I get a little ring around a little bead of the epoxy, when the epoxy's cured, just take a little chisel and get behind it and pop it loose, and it comes off in one piece. Okay, so the wax lift, now you got to get the wax lift off. Okay, so I use a toothbrush. You want to use your wife's toothbrush. And
I'm gonna report you guys.
so use a toothbrush and mineral spirits and scrub on it, and it goes away. There's no problem then with the finishing of the product. You won't have any problem with the finish sticking to the wood. There's just no problem. So you can look at this online, find it online. You will not find this in Rockler. Lee Valley used to sell it, and they weren't given the it's a German company that makes it, and they weren't given the royalties to the company, and then that ended. But there's a couple people in the United States that you can buy this from. This will last you your lifetime, so I can't remember. So mine, this is starting to dry out. It's starting to pull away from the edge again. So this will dry out, and I think I use mineral spirits to repurpose it, so to speak, and get it back in suspension, and then it works just fine again. So the difference between this and just regular wax is there's no silicones in here. So any wax that you get that has silicone is an enemy to finish, and you get it on your wood and you'll never get the silicones off, and you can have real finishing issues with it. So you don't want any silicone wax in your shop at all. What else do I have up here?
Do these have more odor, smell?
No, they're not too bad.
Not too bad, huh?
No, I don't think there's an odor with either one of them. They're just different. You have to let them sit and soak in. If you take and glue up like you do over here, you're gonna have a dry joint that's gonna come apart. It just needs that extra time just to soak into that wood.
Question.
Yeah,
That epoxy,
yeah.
how do you, I mean, I'm assuming we're not gonna put this in a glue bottle and use it and use
Have
it
you
a
used
month
it?
from now.
Yeah, that's right.
So what do you usually use to apply?
Depends on how much I'm gonna use.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a gram scale at home, so I'll weigh things out by grams. But I also have 2 syringes here. Okay, so this is the hardener, and this is the resin. So I'll push out, so each one is a cc, so if it's a small amount that I'm gonna use, maybe I'll do 2 cc's of resin and 1 cc of hardener.
So you put it on a piece of wax paper or whatever,
I use
Wood?
just a piece of wood.
and you mix it then?
With any epoxy, you mix it and mix it and mix it, and when you're done mixing, then you mix it some more, and you mix it some more, and you mix it some more. And when you think you're done, then you mix it some more. Yeah, you just want to get it into one homogeneous mixture.
Is some of that stuff like, I use some for repairing a canoe. They recommend a shallower dish if you're using a volume, otherwise.
Yes, that is correct. So tell them what you're experiencing if you don't.
Well, it'll get hot and it'll start hardening up on you.
Yes, so epoxy is hydrothermic. So the heat from the hardener will cause it to set up. So if you have a big, thick piece, then yeah, it'll get hard on you. Yeah, so you want to spread it out. You want a bigger pan if you're using that so that you don't have that. I think it's exothermic properties of the epoxy. But it's something I probably didn't use until probably 5 or 6 years ago, but it probably has there's a big potential for it. So it's one of the better glues in the wood shop. They all have their special purpose. So I just bought these 2 because I buy them actually in half-gallon or gallon size, and I wanted something smaller. I can't get the Extend. I think you can buy Extend at Woodcraft in a smaller amount. It's a little bit more difficult to find some of the odder glues, if you will. So, super glues, okay, cyanoacrylates. I'll use some of them for fixtures. If I've got a piece that's splintered, maybe I'll put a little super glue on that and glue the splinter back on. Most of the time I'm not. Most of the time I'm gluing my splinters on with wood glue. Okay, so there's that, and then there's the accelerator. The super glues will go anywhere from 1 to 2 seconds open time to the maximum of about, what does it say here? Yeah, 5 to 30 seconds, and a total assembly time of 8 to 50 seconds. They'll sell the super glues in usually 4 different viscosities. They'll have a thin, a medium, a thick, and a gel. Okay. I don't do a lot with this, but you can. I didn't bring my little electric hot glue gun. That one I use a lot. Okay, I use it for making fixtures. When I do that, and I'm done with the fixture, or if I've got my workpiece and I want to stabilize it to a fixture, I'll use the hot glue. Then you put a little alcohol on there and let it sit about 5 seconds, and it'll break that glue joint very easily. So the alcohol is really handy with that. Last one is contact cement. Now, how many people use contact cement? And what do you use contact cement for?
Laminate, or
What's that?
like for Mike, or
Yeah, plastic laminate. That's the only, so back in the 70s, there was a veneer company in New York called Constantine. Okay, remember them, Don? Yeah, they recommended putting your veneers down with contact cement. Do not. Just, it's not gonna, it's gonna creep, there's gonna be some problems. So, it's real funny, so, all woodworkers have an opinion, and some of us are strongly opinionated. A lot will say you have to have a rigid glue line, but I've done a lot of really nice veneer work with some of the PVAs. I'd use Tape-On 2 as the one that I use on my veneer work if I'm gonna use a PVA. And I do both, okay? If it's in a kitchen where I've got more moisture, and I'm concerned about moisture, I'm gonna use a plastic resin. If it's not around the moisture, then I'll use a PVA. It's easier to work with. And so I have, we talked about a lot of different glues, so I'll pass these around. What's that?
the Type-On translucent.
Oh, the Thick and Quick, is that the one?
Wow, you got that up there too, but
This one?
the brown label, the translucent, right there.
Oh, it's another translucent, so it's
Just doesn't.
really the same glue as the white. Both of these are clear. Yeah, when they dry. The Thick and Quick is a specialty glue. So that one is very thick. There's very little water left in it. So that one I've taken some miter joints like it in a picture frame. Held them in place for, I don't know, 30 seconds. And then let it go, let it cure for a couple hours and you're good to go. Some of the clamping pressure stuff, or clamping stuff. So with the Type-Bond original or the Type-Bond 2, I've left clamps on for as little as a half an hour and worked the product and cut it apart on the table saw. If I'm gonna cut it apart and put it back together, I've done it in as little as a half an hour. So it's not what they recommend, but you can do it a lot quicker than you think. So that's what I've got. Any other questions? Yeah.
In our shop, which I hope none of you guys are using, we use a lot of melamine. And there's a product called Rue Glue. I think there's other ones too that'll glue melamine. If you have melamine on one face and raw on another, it will glue. But
Yeah. Are you talking about the one from Type-Bond?
I think Type-Bond has one too. This is the
Type-Bond does have a melamine.
Right, yeah. But it's, hopefully we're not using a lot of melamine.
Yeah.